Imagine you are sitting in traffic, already running late for an important meeting. The car in front of you moves painfully slow, and suddenly, someone cuts you off without even a glance. Your heart races, your hands tighten around the steering wheel, and a surge of frustration floods your mind. You feel the heat rising in your chest, and for a moment, it feels impossible to control. But have you ever stopped to wonder, where does this anger come from? Why do small things have the power to ruin our entire day? Why does a single word, a single action, or a minor inconvenience make our hearts pound with frustration? Can we truly live a life free from anger? Or is it something we are destined to struggle with forever? We have all been there. A loved one says something hurtful. A stranger behaves rudely. Life throws unexpected challenges at us. And before we know it, we are caught in the grip of anger, reacting before we even realize it. But what if there was another way? What if we could break free from this cycle and find a deeper sense of peace, no matter what happens around us? Think of a moment when you lost your temper over something small. Maybe a misplaced item, a delay, or a misunderstanding. Looking back, did the anger help? Did it solve the problem? Or did it only make things worse? Anger often feels justified in the moment, but later, we are left with regret, exhaustion, and sometimes, broken relationships. Welcome to Wisdom Woven, where we explore ancient teachings that can transform our daily lives. In this journey, we will uncover the secrets of Buddhist wisdom, practical insights that can help you break free from anger and discover a life of calm and clarity. If you have ever wished to control your emotions instead of being controlled by them, you are in the right place. There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% subscribed. So please, take a moment, like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world, and it helps us bring these life-changing teachings to more people. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever struggled with anger? What helps you stay calm? We would love to hear from you. Anger is not just an emotion. It is a habit, a pattern we unknowingly reinforce every day. But habits can be changed. In Buddhism, anger is seen as one of the greatest obstacles to peace. It clouds our judgment, damages our relationships, and keeps us trapped in suffering. However, the good news is that anger is not permanent. It is not a fixed part of who you are. Throughout this series, we will explore how Buddhist wisdom offers a path to freedom from anger. We will not talk about suppression or pretending to be calm when we are not. Instead, we will uncover practical ways to understand, manage, and dissolve anger completely. You will learn how to recognize anger before it takes over, how to shift your mindset, and how to replace frustration with clarity and peace. Every person experiences anger differently. For some, it is loud and explosive. For others, it is silent but deeply destructive. Regardless of how anger manifests in your life, the teachings of Buddhism provide a powerful way to handle it. These insights are not just philosophy. They are real tools you can use in everyday situations, whether dealing with difficult people, stressful moments, or painful memories. The journey to a life without anger begins with understanding. The more we become aware of what triggers us, the more power we gain over our emotions. Awareness is the first step, and once you see anger for what it really is, it loses its grip over you. Imagine waking up in the morning without carrying yesterday's frustrations. Imagine facing a difficult conversation without feeling the need to argue or prove yourself right. Imagine being in a challenging situation and responding with calm wisdom instead of anger. This is not just an idea, it is something you can achieve. As we move forward, we will uncover ancient Buddhist teachings that have helped countless people find peace. These teachings are not just for monks or spiritual seekers. They are for anyone who wants to live a happier, more peaceful life. Let this be the beginning of your transformation. Stay with us as we explore these powerful insights, one step at a time. The next part will take us deeper into the root of anger, where it comes from, why it feels so strong, and how we can begin to free ourselves from its grip. Understanding anger, its roots and consequences. Anger is a powerful emotion. It rises within us like a storm, unpredictable and often overwhelming. It makes us react impulsively, without thinking, and often leads to regret. But have you ever wondered where anger comes from? Why does something as simple as a slight comment or a minor inconvenience sometimes set us off? To understand anger, we must first look at its roots. At its core, anger is a reaction to something we perceive as an obstacle or threat. It could be a person, a situation, or even our own expectations that have been unfulfilled. But what is it about these things that triggers anger? The simple answer is that we feel that our peace is being disturbed. We believe that something is standing in our way, and instead of calmly addressing the situation, we lash out. The Buddha taught that we suffer because of our attachments and desires. These attachments don't just refer to material things. They also include our emotional attachments, the way we expect people to behave, the way we want the world to treat us. When these desires aren't met, we feel a deep sense of dissatisfaction. Anger arises when we feel that something has taken away what we think we deserve or need. This is where the roots of anger lie, in our attachments to a certain outcome, to things being the way we want them. But let's pause and think for a moment. If we expect everything to go according to plan, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Life is inherently unpredictable. People are unpredictable. No matter how much we try to control the world around us, there will always be things that don't go the way we want them to. And when this happens, instead of accepting reality, we resist it. Anger is born out of this resistance. It is the mind's way of fighting against what is, rather than accepting it for what it is. Now, let's take a closer look at the consequences of anger. Often, we think of anger as just an emotion that we feel. We believe that it only affects us internally. But the truth is, anger has far-reaching consequences. First, it affects us physically. When we are angry, our bodies go into fight or flight mode. Our heart rate increases, our muscles tense, and we feel a surge of energy coursing through us. This is not a comfortable state to be in, and it's certainly not conducive to peace or well-being. Beyond the physical toll, anger also clouds our judgment. When we are angry, we are not thinking clearly. We may say things we don't mean or make decisions that we later regret. Our focus shifts from finding a solution to simply reacting to the situation. We stop seeing things objectively and instead view everything through the lens of our anger. This can lead to poor choices and damaged relationships. In Buddhism, there's a term called mudita, which refers to sympathetic joy, the ability to feel happiness for others. But anger blocks this. It makes us focus only on our own grievances, preventing us from feeling compassion for others. When we are consumed by anger, we fail to see the humanity in others. We view them as obstacles to our happiness, rather than as people with their own struggles and pain. The consequences of anger extend beyond the moment. It leaves scars on our mind. Each time we allow ourselves to react with anger, we strengthen the habit. Over time, this habitual reaction becomes ingrained in us. We begin to see anger as a normal, even justified response to life's challenges. But the more we feed this habit, the more it grows. And just like any habit, it becomes harder to break. But the most damaging consequence of anger is that it separates us from our true selves. When we are angry, we are not at peace with who we are. We are not living in harmony with the present moment. Instead, we are caught in a cycle of frustration, bitterness, and regret. This is the true cost of anger. It takes us away from our natural state of calm, compassion, and understanding. Buddhism teaches us that all emotions, including anger, arise from ignorance. We are ignorant of the impermanence of life. We forget that everything changes, that nothing lasts forever. When we hold on to anger, we are holding on to something that is fleeting, something that will soon pass. But we try to control it, to make it last longer, because we think it will bring us relief. In reality, it only brings more suffering. Now, you may be wondering, is it possible to live without anger? Is it even realistic to think that we can completely let go of this powerful emotion? The answer is yes, but it takes time. Just as we learned how to react with anger, we can also learn how to respond with wisdom and compassion. It requires awareness, patience, and practice. It's not about suppressing the anger or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about understanding it, seeing it for what it truly is, and choosing to respond in a way that brings peace, not more suffering. The Buddha gave us many tools to deal with anger. One of the most powerful is mindfulness. By practicing mindfulness, we can observe our emotions without becoming entangled in them. We can see anger arise, but we don't have to follow it. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can pause and take a moment to breathe, to reflect. This moment of awareness is enough to stop anger in its tracks and allow us to choose a different response. Another important practice is compassion. When we are angry with someone, it's easy to forget that they, too, are suffering. They, too, have their own struggles and pain. Anger blinds us to this, but compassion opens our hearts. By cultivating compassion, we shift our focus from what has hurt us to what we can offer others. This shift in perspective is one of the most powerful ways to dissolve anger. But it's not just about dealing with anger in the moment. It's also about changing the way we view life. If we learn to accept that life is unpredictable, that we can't control everything, we are less likely to be thrown into anger when things don't go as planned. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation. It means recognizing that life is as it is, and that we don't have to fight against it. When we stop resisting, we stop feeding our anger. In the end, understanding the roots of anger is the first step toward transforming it. By looking deeply into our attachments and desires, we can begin to see why we react the way we do. And by practicing mindfulness, compassion, and acceptance, we can learn to let go of anger and embrace peace. It's not an overnight process, but with time and patience, it is possible to live a life free from the grip of anger. Imagine a life where your peace is not dependent on what others do or what happens around you. Imagine a life where you are free to respond to the challenges of life with calm and clarity. This is the life that is waiting for you, if you are willing to take the first step. Buddhist wisdom on emotions, the nature of mind. In the stillness of a quiet room, there's a moment of peace. But then, like a sudden storm, a thought enters the mind. It might be a memory, a fear, or even a small annoyance. Before you know it, your heart races, your thoughts spiral, and the calmness you once had is swept away. This is the nature of the mind. It is constantly moving, changing, and often, it is the source of our anger. But what if we could stop the storm before it begins? The Buddha taught that the mind is like a restless monkey, jumping from thought to thought without rest. This restlessness is the root of our emotional suffering. Just as a monkey cannot sit still, our minds rarely stay in one place for long. They are constantly distracted, swinging between the past and the future, rarely in the present moment. This wandering mind often becomes the breeding ground for anger. When you experience anger, you are not just reacting to the world around you. You are reacting to the stories your mind tells you. Perhaps someone said something hurtful, or an event didn't go as planned. But the anger isn't just because of the other person or the situation. It is because of how your mind interprets these events. The mind attaches meanings to what happens, and when these meanings are connected to your ego, your sense of self, the result is often anger. This is where Buddhism offers profound wisdom. The Buddha recognized that the mind's attachments are what create suffering. When we believe that we must protect ourselves, prove our worth, or get our way, we set ourselves up for frustration. Our emotions, like anger, arise when these attachments are threatened. The person who cuts you off in traffic isn't the real cause of your anger. The real cause is the attachment to your time, your plans, your comfort. When something or someone threatens that attachment, anger arises. Understanding this is the first step towards freedom. The Buddha didn't suggest that we suppress our emotions or ignore them. Instead, he taught that we can understand them. By observing the mind, we can begin to see the patterns that lead to anger. We can watch how the mind stirs up thoughts, attaches to them, and then magnifies them, making them feel larger than life. This is the nature of the mind. it creates stories and feeds them. And when we believe these stories, we get caught in their grip. Buddhism invites us to step back and become the observer of our mind. Instead of reacting immediately to emotions, we can pause and observe. Notice how your mind begins to stir. Watch how your thoughts shift from calm to frustration. The next time you feel anger bubbling up, take a moment to observe the process. You might find that the anger is based on something small, a fleeting thought or an old belief. Perhaps the person who cut you off isn't even a personal threat, but your mind makes it feel like an attack. When you step back and look at it, you may realize that there's no need to react with anger. This is mindfulness in action, being aware of your thoughts, not being controlled by them. Mindfulness doesn't ask you to push away your emotions. It simply encourages you to be aware of them. It teaches you to recognize when the mind starts to grasp onto a thought and to let it pass without reacting. Just as you wouldn't let a wave sweep you away, you don't have to let your thoughts and emotions take control. They can come, but they don't have to define you. One of the Buddha's most important teachings is the concept of impermanence. Everything, including emotions, is in constant flux. No feeling lasts forever. Anger, like all emotions, is temporary. It rises, it peaks, and then it fades. But if you hold on to it, if you fuel it with more thoughts and stories, it can last much longer. It is like holding on to a hot coal, thinking it will bring you warmth, but instead, it only burns you. The more you feed anger with thoughts of revenge or frustration, the more you become consumed by it. The key is to let go. Let the emotion rise, but don't hold on to it. Let it pass. You might wonder, though, how can you stop anger from taking over when it feels so powerful? The Buddha taught that the mind has the capacity for great clarity and peace. It's like a muddy pond. If you let the water settle, the mud sinks to the bottom, and the water becomes clear. Your mind, too, can become clear. When you stop reacting to every emotion, when you stop fueling the fire of anger with thoughts of blame, your mind starts to settle. The storm begins to calm, and peace takes its place. This is the power of mindfulness and understanding. In Buddhism, there's also the practice of loving kindness, a gentle, compassionate attitude towards yourself and others. This practice is not about ignoring wrongdoings or pretending to be happy when you're not. It's about responding to yourself and others with compassion, understanding that everyone has their struggles, and that no one is perfect, including yourself. When you practice loving kindness, you shift from a mindset of attack to a mindset of understanding. Instead of seeing someone who wronged you as the enemy, you begin to see them as another human being, struggling with their own challenges. This shift in perception can dissolve anger. Another powerful Buddhist concept is non-attachment. Non-attachment doesn't mean you don't care about things or people. It means that you don't cling to them. You don't expect them to always be the way you want them to be. Life is full of surprises, some good, some bad. But when you hold on to expectations and attachments, you set yourself up for disappointment. And when your expectations are not met, anger arises. The Buddha taught that attachment is a cause of suffering. When you learn to let go of your expectations and accept things as they are, you create space for peace. This doesn't mean you stop caring or that you become indifferent. Far from it. In fact, it can make you more compassionate and loving because you're not reacting out of fear or anger. You are simply accepting the world as it is and responding to it with wisdom and compassion. When you stop holding on to expectations, you free yourself from the cycle of frustration and anger. The Buddha's wisdom on the nature of the mind teaches us that we are not at the mercy of our emotions. Emotions, like anger, are not our true nature. They are passing clouds in the sky of our consciousness. We don't have to let them control us. By understanding the nature of our minds and the impermanence of emotions, we can stop reacting impulsively. We can stop feeding the fire of anger and instead create a space for peace to grow. Remember, the mind is like a garden. If you water the weeds of anger and frustration, they will grow. But if you tend to the seeds of mindfulness, compassion, and understanding, your garden will flourish with peace. The next time you feel anger rising, take a moment to observe it. Watch it, but don't hold on to it. Let it pass, like a wave on the shore. And in that moment of awareness, you'll find that the storm of anger has no power over you. Mindfulness, the key to mastering anger. In the busy world we live in, it's easy to get swept away by the constant flow of thoughts, emotions, and distractions. It feels as though we're always moving from one thing to the next, never truly stopping to observe what's happening inside us. In those moments when life doesn't go as planned, anger can rise within us like a storm cloud, blocking our ability to see clearly. But what if there was a way to break free from this cycle? What if, instead of reacting impulsively, we could respond with calm awareness? This is where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is the practice of paying full attention to the present moment without judgment. It's about observing our thoughts, feelings, and sensations as they arise without immediately reacting to them. Imagine you are sitting quietly and you notice a wave of frustration building within you. Instead of letting it take over, mindfulness allows you to simply notice it. You don't need to act on it. You don't need to let it dictate your behavior. You simply observe. And in that moment, you create a space between the feeling and your response. The power of mindfulness is in its ability to help us pause before reacting. Most of the time, we respond to anger without even thinking. Someone cuts us off in traffic, and immediately we feel the heat in our chest. Or a colleague says something rude, and before we know it, we are caught in a whirlwind of frustration. Mindfulness teaches us to take a step back. It shows us that we don't have to react immediately. We can pause, breathe, and choose a response. But mindfulness is not just about controlling our reactions. It's about understanding what triggers our anger in the first place. In every moment, we are constantly reacting to our thoughts and experiences. We become so entangled in them that we forget we have a choice. The moment we are aware of the thoughts that lead to anger, we regain control. We realize that anger is not something that happens to us, but something we create in response to our thoughts. This realization is liberating. In Buddhism, mindfulness is seen as a way to cultivate wisdom. It's not just about being calm in the moment, it's about seeing things as they truly are. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to see that anger is often based on misunderstandings or distorted perceptions. We might feel angry because we think someone has wronged us, but when we take a moment to reflect, we may see that it was simply a misunderstanding. Mindfulness allows us to see past our initial emotional reactions and gain clarity. When we are mindful, we also begin to notice how our anger affects our bodies. Anger is not just a mental state, it has a physical effect. We might feel our hearts racing, our muscles tensing, or our breathing becoming shallow. These are signals from our body that we are experiencing anger. Mindfulness helps us become aware of these physical cues before they spiral out of control. When we notice our body's response, we can intervene before the anger grows. This awareness allows us to take a deep breath, relax our muscles, and return to a state of calm. One of the most powerful aspects of mindfulness is that it helps us cultivate compassion, both for ourselves and others. Anger often arises when we feel hurt, misunderstood, or threatened. We react because we believe that our needs are not being met, and we want to defend ourselves. But mindfulness teaches us that we don't need to defend ourselves at all. We can acknowledge our pain and our hurt, but we don't need to let it control us. Through mindfulness, we learn to respond with understanding, not aggression. This is where Buddhist teachings shine. The Buddha taught that we should treat ourselves and others with kindness and compassion, especially in moments of conflict. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to see that others are also struggling, that they too are experiencing pain, fear, and frustration. This understanding softens our anger and allows us to approach situations with empathy, rather than hostility. Mindfulness is not something we practice only when we feel angry. It's a way of living, a way of being present in every moment. It's about paying attention to our thoughts, words, and actions at all times. When we live mindfully, we are less likely to be swept away by our emotions. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can respond thoughtfully and with intention. Over time, this practice becomes a habit, and we find that we are able to navigate difficult situations with a calm and clear mind. It's important to remember that mindfulness is not about suppressing our emotions. We don't need to push our anger away or pretend that it's not there. Instead, we learn to acknowledge it, to sit with it, and understand it. When we do this, we no longer allow anger to control us. We become the masters of our own emotions, and we find that anger no longer has the same hold over us. It becomes just another fleeting emotion, one that passes through us without causing harm. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate mindfulness is through meditation. Meditation gives us the space and time to observe our thoughts and emotions without distraction. It's a way to practice being present with ourselves, without judgment. By meditating regularly, we strengthen our ability to be mindful in our everyday lives. We begin to see that the anger we experience is not who we are. It's simply an emotion that arises and passes away. We are not our anger. We are the awareness that observes it. In the Buddhist tradition, mindfulness is also closely linked to the practice of right speech and right action. When we are mindful of our thoughts, we are more likely to speak and act with kindness and compassion. Instead of reacting with harsh words or actions, we respond with patience and understanding. This not only helps us manage our own anger, but also helps create a more peaceful environment around us. So, how can we start incorporating mindfulness into our daily lives? The first step is to practice being present. Start by paying attention to the small moments, the feeling of your breath as you inhale and exhale, the sensation of your feet on the ground, the sounds around you. When you become aware of your surroundings, you will naturally become more aware of your thoughts and feelings as well. The next step is to observe your emotions without judgment. When you feel anger arise, simply notice it. You don't need to do anything with it right away. Just observe it. You might notice that it is temporary, that it comes and goes like a wave. Over time, you'll begin to notice patterns in your emotions. You'll see what triggers your anger, and you'll begin to understand it better. The more you practice mindfulness, the easier it will become to stay calm in difficult situations. You'll find that you don't need to react immediately, and that in those moments of anger, you can pause, breathe, and choose a more peaceful response. The beauty of mindfulness is that it is always available to us. It's not something that requires special conditions or circumstances. It's simply the act of being present, of paying attention to what is happening in the moment. In conclusion, mindfulness is a powerful tool in the journey to overcoming anger. It helps us break free from the automatic reactions that often lead to conflict. By being present, observing our emotions, and responding with clarity, we can transform our relationship with anger. Instead of allowing it to control us, we can choose to live with greater peace and compassion. The more we practice mindfulness, the easier it becomes to navigate the challenges of life without being swept away by anger. With mindfulness, we discover that true peace is always within reach. Detachment and letting go, the power of non-attachment. Detachment is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean you stop caring about people or the world around you. It doesn't mean you withdraw from life or live in isolation. In fact, true detachment is the opposite of indifference. It is about being deeply connected with the world, with those you love, but doing so without getting attached to the outcomes, the expectations, or the idea of control. It is a profound understanding that you do not need to hold on to anything to feel complete. When we hold on to things, whether it's anger, a desire for control, or even our own expectations, we carry an unnecessary weight. Imagine walking through life with a heavy backpack filled with all the things that weigh you down. Anger, jealousy, and frustration are like stones in that backpack. The more you carry, the harder life becomes. But detachment is like taking off that heavy backpack. It lightens your burden, giving you the freedom to move more gracefully through life. Detachment in Buddhism is called vairagya. It's the understanding that nothing in life is permanent. People come and go. Success and failure are temporary. Your emotions, both positive and negative, are fleeting. And yet, we cling to them as though they are permanent. We let the little things control our peace. We tie our happiness to things that are outside of us. But true happiness comes from within, from a state of inner peace that cannot be disturbed by the external world. Consider this. Think about a time when something didn't go the way you expected. Perhaps it was a missed opportunity or a broken relationship. How did it affect you? Did you let that disappointment take over your mind for days, weeks, or even years? Detachment teaches us that life doesn't always go the way we want, and that's perfectly okay. In fact, it's the way life is meant to unfold. It is in these moments, when things seem to fall apart, that we learn the most about ourselves. The ability to let go and move forward without bitterness is the key to true freedom. Let's look at a simple example. Imagine a person who is deeply attached to their career. They have spent years building their reputation, climbing the ladder, and accumulating wealth. One day, something unexpected happens. Maybe the company shuts down, or they lose their job. If their happiness and sense of self-worth were tied to that job, the loss would feel like a devastating blow. It would not just be a loss of income, but a loss of identity. Their world would crumble, and their peace would be shattered. But what if, instead of attaching their happiness to the job, they had learned to find joy in the journey, not in the outcome? What if they had embraced the idea that their career, like everything else in life, was transient? They could have found peace even in the face of loss. Detachment doesn't mean not caring. It means caring without needing to possess, without needing to control. In Buddhist philosophy, detachment is not about rejecting the world. It is about recognizing that you don't need to hold on to it to find peace. When we become too attached to our possessions, relationships, or achievements, we start to believe that our happiness depends on them. But nothing in this world lasts forever. People change, things break, situations evolve. True peace comes when we let go of the need for permanence. This doesn't mean we don't value our relationships or our goals. In fact, detachment makes us more present, more engaged, and more compassionate. When you are not attached to how things turn out, you are free to experience life as it is, without resistance, without fear of loss. You can appreciate things without the weight of needing them to stay the same. You can love deeply without clinging to the person you love. The Buddha taught that attachment leads to suffering. When we are attached, we create expectations. When those expectations are not met, we experience disappointment, frustration, and pain. But when we learn to let go of those attachments, we allow ourselves to flow with life. We stop resisting the natural course of things. We accept that everything changes, and in that acceptance, we find peace. Letting go doesn't mean that we no longer care about the people or things we love. On the contrary, it allows us to love without fear. When you are detached, you don't need others to behave in a certain way to be happy. You love them as they are, without trying to change them or make them fit into your vision of what they should be. This leads to deeper, more genuine relationships because you are not holding expectations over them. Think about the last time you had an argument with someone close to you. Was there an attachment to being right? Did you hold on to your perspective because you didn't want to let go of your view of the situation? What if, instead of insisting on your point of view, you simply let go of the need to be right? What if, instead, you listened and accepted the other person's perspective without judgment? In that space of detachment, both parties can find peace. The argument loses its power, and the relationship can heal. This also applies to how we approach life's challenges. We may face hardships, but the key is not to let these challenges define us. Life will never be free of difficulties. Whether it's losing a loved one, going through a financial struggle, or dealing with personal failure, these are all part of the human experience. The question is not whether we face hardship, but how we respond to it. Do we respond with attachment, clinging to the idea that things should be different? Or do we respond with detachment, understanding that this moment is a passing experience, not a permanent condition. A person who practices detachment faces life with an open heart and a calm mind. They are not easily rattled by challenges because they know that these challenges are temporary. They know that their true nature is not defined by external events but by their inner peace. Detachment brings freedom, the freedom to live fully, to love deeply, and to experience life without the constant need to control it. Now, this might sound difficult. In a world that encourages attachment to success, possessions, and even relationships, letting go seems unnatural. But it's important to remember that detachment is not a loss, it is a gain. When you detach, you gain freedom from worry, from fear, and from regret. You become less dependent on the world around you to determine your happiness. Instead, your happiness comes from within, from your inner state of peace. Let's consider another example. Imagine you are facing a difficult time in your life, perhaps a personal failure or a painful breakup. If you become overly attached to the idea of how things should have turned out, you will find yourself stuck in suffering. You might replay the past over and over in your mind, wishing for things to be different. But by practicing detachment, you can accept what is. You can acknowledge the pain without letting it consume you. You can choose to let go of the need for things to be different and allow yourself to heal. In Buddhism, the practice of detachment is closely linked to the concept of impermanence or anicca. This is the understanding that everything in life is constantly changing. Nothing stays the same. When we accept impermanence, we no longer cling to things, because we understand that they will change, and that's okay. Embracing this truth brings peace, because it frees us from the need to hold on to what is fleeting. So, the next time you find yourself getting angry or frustrated, ask yourself, what am I attached to right now? Am I attached to the outcome? Am I attached to my idea of how things should be? When you recognize that attachment is the root of your anger, you can begin to let it go. The more you practice detachment, the more freedom you will experience. You will no longer be controlled by your desires or fears. Instead, you will be free to live in the present moment, fully accepting life as it is, with all its imperfections and uncertainties. In the end, detachment is not about withdrawing from life, it's about living more fully. It's about being able to engage with the world without being weighed down by attachment. It is the key to inner peace, and it is available to all of us in every moment. Let go of what no longer serves you. Find freedom in letting go. And in that freedom, you will discover the deep, unshakable peace that comes from within. Compassion and loving kindness, transforming anger into peace. When anger arises, it can feel like a storm, powerful and uncontrollable, consuming everything in its path. But what if, instead of feeding this storm, we could create a calm within ourselves? What if we could meet the fire of anger with the soft light of compassion? It might sound impossible, but in Buddhism, we are taught that compassion and loving kindness are some of the most powerful antidotes to anger. These qualities don't just calm the mind, they transform it, allowing us to move through life with more peace and understanding. You see, anger often comes from a place of hurt. When someone says something unkind or does something that feels unjust, we feel wounded. That wound can trigger anger, as we try to protect ourselves from the pain. But if we look closer, we realize that the person who caused the hurt might also be struggling, might also be dealing with their own pain. By extending compassion instead of holding on to anger, we can break the cycle of hurt and heal ourselves. Compassion is not weakness. It is not about tolerating wrongdoings or letting others walk over us. It is about understanding that all beings, including ourselves, face challenges, and sometimes, in our suffering, we react in ways that harm others. When we understand this, it becomes easier to release the anger and respond with patience, understanding, and kindness. Compassion invites us to see the world through the eyes of others. It asks us to recognize that no one is perfect, and we all have our flaws, our weaknesses, and our moments of pain. Imagine a situation where someone has wronged you. Perhaps they were rude, disrespectful, or hurtful. You could react with anger, letting the situation spiral into conflict. Or You could choose to pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what is this person going through? What might be causing them to act this way? This shift in perspective is the power of compassion. When you choose to see the other person as more than just their actions, you give yourself the opportunity to respond with wisdom instead of reaction. Now, this does not mean that you allow yourself to be treated badly or that you condone harmful behavior. Compassion is not about staying silent in the face of injustice. It's about recognizing that anger will not solve the problem. Anger only fuels more anger, and in the end, it is the one who is angry who suffers the most. By embracing compassion, you choose to free yourself from the burden of anger, and you open the door to healing and understanding. Loving kindness is another important quality that Buddhism teaches us to develop in moments of anger. Loving kindness is the genuine wish for all beings to be happy, to be free from suffering. When we practice loving kindness, we focus not on what others have done to us, but on what we can do to bring peace to ourselves and others. It's a simple but powerful practice. You don't need to wait for others to change. You can begin by cultivating love and kindness within your own heart. When anger flares up, instead of focusing on the negative emotions, shift your focus to the warmth of loving kindness. Think to yourself, may I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. And then, extend this loving kindness to others. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering. As you repeat these phrases, notice how your body begins to relax, how your mind begins to soften. This practice doesn't just reduce anger, it shifts your entire perspective. It helps you move from a place of judgment and resentment to one of acceptance and understanding. But this practice is not just about moments when anger arises. It is something that can be woven into your everyday life. Start by practicing compassion and loving kindness towards yourself. So often, we are our harshest critics. We beat ourselves up for our mistakes, for our shortcomings, for the times when we fail. But just like others, we are human. We, too, have our struggles. When you treat yourself with kindness and understanding, you create a foundation of peace that makes it easier to respond with compassion towards others. In Buddhism, there is a beautiful teaching called the Four Immeasurables, which are 4 qualities that every practitioner is encouraged to develop. These qualities are loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. By cultivating these 4 qualities, we can transform the way we interact with the world. Loving kindness allows us to wish for the happiness of others. Compassion allows us to alleviate their suffering. Joy helps us rejoice in the happiness of others, and equanimity helps us stay calm and balanced in the face of life's ups and downs. These qualities are like seeds. At first, they may seem small and fragile, but as you nurture them, they grow and begin to bear fruit. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes to respond with compassion instead of anger. It doesn't mean that you will never feel angry again, but it does mean that you will have the tools to navigate anger when it arises. And over time, you will find that you don't need to hold on to anger for as long as you used to. The more you embrace compassion, the more your anger will begin to dissolve. As you continue on this journey, remember that every moment is an opportunity to practice. Every encounter, every challenge, every difficult situation can be a chance to cultivate compassion and loving kindness. Even in the midst of conflict, you can choose how you respond. You can choose peace over anger, understanding over judgment, and love over hate. One powerful story in Buddhism tells of a great master who, while walking down a path, was confronted by a man who insulted him in the harshest terms. The man's words were meant to provoke anger, but the master did not react. Instead, he smiled gently and said, "If you offer me a gift, but I do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man was confused, so the master explained, "Your anger is a gift you offer to me, but I do not accept it. It is yours to keep." The man, ashamed of his actions, apologized and left. In this story, the master shows us that we do not have to accept the anger of others. We can choose to leave it where it belongs, in the hands of the person who is angry. When we learn to respond with compassion and loving kindness, we begin to change the way we see the world. We stop seeing others as threats or obstacles, and we start to see them as fellow human beings, each facing their own struggles. Compassion helps us to build bridges instead of walls, to find common ground instead of division. It reminds us that, at the core, we are all connected by our shared humanity. The next time anger rises within you, pause. Take a deep breath. Remember that beneath the surface of anger lies something more: hurt, fear, or misunderstanding. Instead of feeding the fire, try to meet it with the calm presence of compassion. And watch how the storm begins to fade, replaced by the gentle light of understanding and peace. Through compassion and loving kindness, we not only transform our own hearts, but we also have the power to bring peace to the world around us. The role of ego in anger: overcoming self-centeredness. There is an ancient saying that goes, "The ego is like a veil that clouds our perception of reality." When we allow our ego to control us, we lose touch with our true nature. This is one of the most important lessons in Buddhism, understanding how the ego fuels anger and prevents us from experiencing peace. But what does this mean? And how can we truly understand the connection between anger and the ego? Let me explain it in simple terms. Imagine you are in a situation where someone criticizes you. It could be something small, like the way you dress or how you speak, or something larger, like a decision you've made. Instantly, you feel your chest tighten, your face flush, and your mind begins to race. Why does this happen? Why does a simple comment feel like an attack? It is because of the ego. The ego is the part of us that constantly seeks validation, approval, and recognition. It believes that it must protect itself from anything that threatens its identity or self-worth. In these moments, anger arises not because the person is necessarily wrong, but because your ego feels threatened. You want to defend yourself, to prove that you are right, that you matter. The more you cling to your sense of self, the more easily you fall into the trap of anger. This is why Buddhists teach that ego is one of the biggest obstacles to peace. It is not the external events that cause anger, but our inner reaction to them, shaped by our attachment to self. When you react with anger, what you are really doing is giving power to your ego. It is as though the ego takes control of your mind, and instead of responding with wisdom or understanding, it acts out of insecurity and fear. The ego does not care about peace. It only cares about preserving itself. It wants to be right, it wants to win, and it wants to feel superior. And in doing so, it clouds your ability to see things clearly. You might be thinking, but isn't it natural to want to defend myself when I'm attacked? Yes, it is natural. But here is where Buddhism offers a different perspective. Instead of seeing yourself as a separate, isolated being that needs constant defense, Buddhism teaches that we are all connected. We are not isolated from the world around us. Our actions, words, and even our thoughts affect others, just as theirs affect us. When you hold on to your ego, you are trapped in the illusion of separation. You believe that the world revolves around you, that everything should cater to your needs, your desires, and your sense of self. But in truth, this is not reality. Reality is interdependent. Think about the last time you were angry. Did it help you in any way? Did it change the situation? Often, anger makes things worse. It blinds you to the truth and causes you to act impulsively. The more you react out of ego, the more you reinforce the belief that you are separate from others. But when you release the ego's grip, you begin to see the world differently. You realize that you are not an isolated entity, but part of something much greater. This shift in perspective is one of the most profound teachings in Buddhism. Now, how do we let go of the ego and the anger it creates? The answer lies in mindfulness. By becoming aware of our thoughts and emotions, we can observe when our ego is trying to take control. Instead of reacting immediately, we learn to pause, to breathe, and to reflect. This pause creates space between our thoughts and actions, allowing us to choose a more peaceful response. Mindfulness teaches us to observe our anger without judgment. We begin to understand that anger is not a part of who we are. It is simply a passing emotion, a reaction to our attachment to the ego. When we stop identifying with our anger, it loses its power. We no longer feel the need to defend ourselves or prove our worth. Instead, we can respond with compassion, wisdom, and understanding. Let me share a simple practice with you. The next time you feel anger rising within you, try to take a deep breath and observe the feeling. Notice how your body feels. Are your fists clenched? Is your heart racing? Just acknowledge these sensations without judgment. Then, gently remind yourself that this anger does not define you. It is not your true nature. Your true nature is peace, love, and compassion. As you become more aware of the ego's role in your anger, you can begin to release it. Another powerful tool to overcome the ego is to practice humility. Humility is the recognition that we do not have all the answers, that we are not always right, and that we are not above others. When we let go of the need to always be right, we open ourselves to learning and growing. We begin to see others not as threats to our ego, but as fellow beings on the same journey. This shift in mindset allows us to respond to difficult situations with grace rather than anger. It's also important to remember that everyone, including you, is imperfect. We all make mistakes, we all have flaws, and we all have moments of weakness. The ego wants to protect us from the pain of feeling vulnerable, but true strength comes from embracing our imperfections. When you let go of the need to be perfect, you free yourself from the pressure of constantly defending your ego. When you truly understand the role of ego and anger, you begin to see the power in choosing peace over conflict. You no longer need to prove yourself, because you know your worth is not determined by external approval or recognition. Your peace comes from within, from the understanding that you are enough just as you are. The Buddha taught that overcoming the ego is not about suppressing it or denying its existence. It is about understanding its nature and choosing not to let it control you. When you understand that the ego is just a temporary, conditioned part of the mind, you can begin to transcend it. This does not mean that the ego will disappear overnight. It is a lifelong practice. But with each passing day, as you learn to respond with awareness and compassion instead of ego-driven anger, you move closer to true freedom. In the end, the key to overcoming anger is to let go of the belief that you are separate from others. You are part of a vast, interconnected web of life. When you understand this, you realize that there is no need to defend yourself from others. Instead, you can choose to respond with love, compassion, and understanding, knowing that anger only harms you and those around you. So, take a moment and reflect on your relationship with your ego. How often does it drive your actions? How often does it lead you into anger and conflict? With practice, you can begin to loosen the grip of the ego and find peace. Remember, this journey is not about perfection. It's about progress, about becoming more aware and more compassionate with each passing day. As you continue to walk the path of peace, remember that the greatest freedom comes when you are no longer a prisoner to your ego. You will find that life becomes lighter, more joyful, and more peaceful. And most importantly, you will discover a deep sense of inner calm, no matter what the world throws at you. Practical Buddhist techniques for dissolving anger. When we talk about dissolving anger, it's important to remember that this is not about suppressing it or pretending it doesn't exist. Anger, like all emotions, is a natural part of being human. But just as we would deal with a storm or a fire, we can learn to respond to our anger with wisdom, allowing it to pass without causing harm to ourselves or others. In the Buddhist tradition, there are several techniques that help us deal with anger. But before diving into these practices, let's first take a moment to reflect on what anger really is. Anger is like a fire. It starts small, a tiny spark, and if we don't pay attention, it grows quickly. But unlike physical fires that need fuel to keep burning, emotional fires, like anger, need our attention and energy to continue. If we stop feeding it, it will burn out. So, the first technique we learn is recognizing anger as soon as it arises. This is where mindfulness comes into play. Mindfulness means paying attention to the present moment without judgment. When anger arises, it doesn't come out of nowhere. It has a cause, a trigger, whether it's something someone said, an event that happened, or even our own expectations not being met. But most importantly, anger begins in our mind. And once we understand this, we begin to see that we have the power to intervene before it takes hold. Imagine you are walking through your day, and someone cuts you off in a crowded market. The old habit would be to feel your blood pressure rise instantly, your thoughts racing to defend yourself, to retaliate in some way. But with mindfulness, you can feel that anger as soon as it arises. You become aware of the feeling, and that awareness gives you the space to make a choice. Instead of letting the anger grow and take over, you can pause, breathe, and let it be. It's like standing still while the storm passes by. One of the core teachings of Buddhism is impermanence, the idea that everything, including our emotions, is temporary. Anger, like all emotions, will pass if we allow it to. But we often make the mistake of clinging to it, feeding it with our thoughts, creating stories in our minds that keep it alive. The more we dwell on our anger, the longer it stays. By understanding the impermanence of anger, we can remind ourselves that it will not last forever. This simple truth allows us to let go of the anger more quickly, knowing that it is a passing wave. Another powerful technique comes from meditation. The Buddhist practice of meditation helps us train our minds to stay calm and centered, even in the face of adversity. But meditation isn't just something you do on a cushion with your eyes closed. It's a skill that can be applied in everyday life. For example, when you feel anger rising, try to meditate for a few moments. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and focus on your breath. Breathe in for a count of 4, hold for 4, and exhale for a count of 4. Just focusing on the rhythm of your breath brings your attention away from the anger and back to the present moment. Now, let's take it a step further. Once you've mastered mindfulness and the practice of breathing, it's time to turn your attention to compassion. This might sound surprising, but in Buddhist teachings, compassion is one of the most powerful antidotes to anger. When someone does something that makes us angry, it's easy to view them as the source of our frustration. But the truth is, most people act out of their own pain or ignorance. They don't intentionally try to hurt us. They are simply acting based on their own conditioning, their own struggles. When you feel anger rising towards someone, try to shift your perspective. Instead of seeing them as an enemy or someone to be angry at, try seeing them as a fellow human being, struggling just like you. This is where compassion comes in. Compassion is the ability to feel empathy for another person's suffering, even when they are the ones causing you pain. It doesn't mean excusing their behavior, but rather recognizing that their actions are a reflection of their own struggles. This can be incredibly difficult, especially when the person who angered you is someone close to you. But if we can remind ourselves that all beings experience suffering, it becomes easier to cultivate compassion, even in the face of frustration. This shift in perspective doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice, a muscle that you build over time. But with each act of compassion, you will find your anger dissolving more easily. Another important Buddhist technique for dealing with anger is the practice of letting go. In our lives, we often hold on to grudges, memories, and past hurts, and this keeps our anger alive. We cling to the belief that we are entitled to be angry, that we deserve justice or an apology. But holding on to anger in this way only hurts us. The person who wronged us might have moved on, but we are left carrying that weight. Buddhism teaches us that attachment is the root cause of suffering. When we attach ourselves to our anger, to our desire for revenge or justice, we only prolong our own suffering. Letting go is not about forgetting what happened or excusing the wrongdoing. It's about freeing ourselves from the grip of anger and resentment. When you let go, you release the emotional weight that keeps you stuck in the past, and you open the door to healing. Finally, we come to forgiveness. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean condoning harmful behavior, nor does it mean that the person who wronged you is let off the hook. Forgiveness is for your own peace of mind. When you forgive, you stop carrying the burden of anger and resentment. You release yourself from the chains that keep you tied to the past. Forgiveness can be difficult, especially when the pain runs deep. But in Buddhism, forgiveness is seen as an act of strength, not weakness. It is a choice to stop letting the past define you and to stop allowing someone else's actions to control your emotions. Forgiveness is a process, not a one-time decision, and it can take time. But each time you choose forgiveness, you choose freedom. As we practice these Buddhist techniques, remember that the goal is not to become perfect or to eliminate all anger forever. Anger will still arise from time to time. It's part of being human. But the more we practice mindfulness, compassion, letting go, and forgiveness, the less power anger has over us. We can learn to respond to anger with wisdom, allowing it to pass without leaving a trail of destruction behind. And as we continue on this journey, we must remember that this is a practice, not a destination. Each day is an opportunity to deepen our understanding and to respond to life's challenges with more grace and more peace. Through consistent practice, the fire of anger becomes less intense, and in its place, a calm, steady presence emerges. By using these simple yet powerful techniques, we can transform anger from a destructive force into an opportunity for growth and healing. And the more we practice, the easier it becomes to live a life of peace, no matter what life throws our way. The power of acceptance, embracing imperfections. In life, we are often our harshest critics. We set high standards for ourselves, thinking we must be perfect in every way. We expect to always be calm, always be successful, and always meet every expectation, our own and others. But what happens when we fall short? What happens when we miss the mark? When things don't go as planned? Often, the result is frustration, disappointment, and, eventually, anger. We are angry at ourselves for not being perfect, angry at the world for not cooperating, and angry at life for being so unfair. But imagine, just for a moment, that perfection is not the goal. What if, instead of aiming for flawlessness, we embraced our imperfections? What if we stopped holding ourselves to such impossible standards and accepted ourselves, just as we are, in this very moment? In Buddhism, one of the most important teachings is the concept of acceptance. It teaches us that life is not meant to be perfect, and we are not meant to be perfect. Imperfection is the natural state of being. It is part of the flow of life, and it is something we must come to terms with if we are to find peace. This acceptance is not about giving up or becoming complacent. It is about letting go of the need to control every aspect of our lives and instead, finding peace in the present moment, no matter how messy or imperfect it may be. Think about the last time something went wrong. Perhaps you made a mistake at work, or a friend let you down. How did you respond? Did you get angry with yourself or with the situation? Did you feel frustrated that things didn't go the way you wanted? Now, think about how you might have responded differently if you had accepted the situation for what it was, just a part of life. When we embrace imperfection, we release the need to control everything, and we can begin to experience life more fully, with all its ups and downs. Acceptance is not a passive act. It is not about resigning yourself to a life of misery or difficulty. Rather, it is about recognizing that life, by its very nature, will never be perfect. And when we accept this truth, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of frustration and anger. Instead of battling with what is, we learn to work with it. Instead of resisting, we learn to flow with the currents of life. When we talk about acceptance, it's easy to think of it as simply giving in to whatever comes our way. But it is much more than that. True acceptance comes from a deep understanding that our experiences, both good and bad, are not here to harm us. They are here to teach us, to guide us on our journey. The more we fight against life's challenges, the more we suffer. The more we resist our own imperfections, the more we fuel our anger. Instead of expecting yourself to be perfect, recognize that mistakes and failures are part of your path. They are opportunities to grow, to learn, and to improve. Every time you stumble, you learn something valuable. Every time you fall, you have the chance to get back up wiser and stronger. This is what it means to truly accept yourself. You are not a failure when you make mistakes. You are simply human, navigating a complex world. And in that human experience, there is beauty. The key to acceptance is understanding that we are not defined by our mistakes. We are not our failures, our anger, or our past. We are much more than that. When we accept ourselves, flaws and all, we can stop trying to live up to an impossible standard of perfection. Instead, we can embrace who we are, in this moment, with all our imperfections, and we can begin to create a life that is more peaceful, more authentic, and more joyful. Think about the natural world around you. Have you ever seen a tree that is perfectly straight, with no crooked branches or imperfect leaves? Have you ever seen a flower that never wilts, a river that flows without obstacles? Of course not. The natural world is full of imperfections. The crooked branch is just as beautiful as the straight one. The wilting flower is just as full of life as the fresh bloom. Imperfection is what gives life its character. It is what makes each person unique, and it is what allows us to grow. This is true for you as well. Your imperfections are not something to hide or be ashamed of. They are what make you who you are. They are what make you human. And when you accept them, you unlock a deeper sense of peace. Instead of fighting against your flaws, you can embrace them, learn from them, and move forward. Acceptance allows you to let go of anger and frustration because it helps you see the bigger picture, that life, with all its challenges and imperfections, is exactly as it should be. When we practice acceptance, we also cultivate compassion, not only for ourselves but for others as well. When we accept our own imperfections, we are better able to accept the imperfections of those around us. We stop expecting others to be perfect, and we begin to understand that they, too, are just trying to navigate a complicated world. This understanding creates space for compassion and kindness. Instead of judging others for their mistakes, we can offer them the same acceptance we have learned to offer ourselves. Let's think about how we can apply acceptance in everyday life. Imagine you are having a conversation with someone, and they say something that upsets you. Normally, you might get angry or feel the urge to defend yourself. But what if, in that moment, you could practice acceptance? What if you could recognize that the person's words or actions are not about you, but rather about them and their own experiences? By accepting the situation as it is, without reacting in anger, you free yourself from unnecessary suffering. You don't need to control how others behave or how things unfold. You only need to accept what is and respond with understanding. When we practice acceptance, we start to see life in a different light. We stop expecting things to always go our way. We stop demanding that the world be perfect. And we begin to realize that true peace comes not from getting everything we want, but from embracing what we have in all its imperfection. Life is messy, it is unpredictable, and it is sometimes difficult. But when we accept it as it is, we find peace in the midst of the chaos. The practice of acceptance is not about being passive or resigning yourself to a life of dissatisfaction. It is about learning to live fully in the present moment without constantly striving for an ideal that will never come. Acceptance is the key to freedom, freedom from anger, freedom from frustration, and freedom from the endless pursuit of perfection. In the end, acceptance is not just about how we react to others or to life's challenges. It is also about how we treat ourselves. When we accept our own imperfections, we can truly begin to love ourselves as we are. We stop punishing ourselves for our mistakes. Instead, we embrace them as opportunities to grow. And when we do this, we create space for compassion, joy, and peace to enter our lives. The power of acceptance lies in its ability to free us from the grip of anger. By accepting life, others, and ourselves just as we are, we can release the need to control everything and allow ourselves to experience true peace. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present, being real, and embracing the beautiful imperfection of life. And when we do that, anger no longer has a place in our hearts. The art of forgiveness, freeing yourself from the past. Imagine carrying a heavy bag with you everywhere you go. This bag is filled with old hurts, past wrongs, and grudges you've been holding on to for years. Every time you encounter someone or something that reminds you of these past experiences, you feel the weight of that bag more and more. You may try to ignore it, but it always lingers. The more you carry it, the heavier it becomes. Now, imagine what it would feel like to simply put that bag down, to let go of everything inside it, and to walk freely without the burden of the past holding you back. In life, we all experience moments where we are hurt, wronged, or betrayed by others. Whether it's a family member, a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger, the pain can feel deep and personal. But holding on to that pain, that anger, can keep us trapped in a prison of our own making. And as long as we cling to these old wounds, we prevent ourselves from experiencing the peace and joy that we deserve. Forgiveness, in its simplest form, is the act of releasing that burden. It is not about forgetting or excusing the wrongs that were done to us. It is not about letting someone off the hook or saying that what they did was okay. Forgiveness is about freeing ourselves from the past, so we can move forward in peace. It is an act of self-love, not a favor for the person who wronged us. When we forgive, we are choosing to no longer let the actions of others dictate our happiness. The Buddha often spoke about forgiveness as a key to inner peace. He taught that anger and resentment are like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. We think that by holding on to our anger, we are punishing those who hurt us. But in reality, we are only harming ourselves. The more we hold on to negative emotions, the more we poison our own minds and hearts. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever carried a grudge for days, weeks, or even years? How did it make you feel? Was it worth it? The bitterness, the resentment, the constant replaying of the event in your mind, it all takes a toll on your mental and emotional health. But when you choose forgiveness, you release that grip, and the weight begins to lift. You begin to feel lighter, freer, and more at peace with yourself. Forgiveness, however, is not always easy. It requires us to confront the pain, acknowledge our hurt, and let go of the story we have been telling ourselves about what happened. It may require us to admit that we have been holding on to anger for far too long, and that it is time to release it. But this act of letting go is liberating. It allows us to break free from the chains of the past and to embrace the present moment with an open heart. Sometimes, the person who wronged us may never apologize. They may never acknowledge the hurt they caused. But that does not mean we have to keep carrying the burden. We are not forgiving them for their sake. We are forgiving for our own. We are choosing peace over pain, freedom over bondage. And in doing so, we begin to heal, both mentally and physically. Studies have shown that holding on to anger and resentment can actually harm our health, leading to stress, anxiety, and even physical ailments. But when we practice forgiveness, we reduce these harmful effects and create space for love and healing to flow. The Buddha also taught that forgiveness is not just for others, but for ourselves as well. Often, we are our own harshest critics. We carry guilt, shame, and self-blame for things we have done in the past. We may feel like we are not worthy of forgiveness, or that we do not deserve peace. But this is not true. Every person makes mistakes, and every person deserves the chance to forgive themselves and move forward. Forgiveness begins with the decision to let go of the past. It starts with acknowledging the hurt, feeling the pain, and then choosing to release it. It is an ongoing practice, one that requires patience and self-compassion. But as we continue to practice forgiveness, we begin to notice its transformative effects on our lives. We feel lighter, more open, and more able to connect with others in a genuine way. We are no longer bound by the past. We are free to create a future filled with peace and love. In Buddhism, forgiveness is often linked to compassion. Compassion is the ability to understand the suffering of others and to respond with kindness and love. When we forgive, we are practicing compassion not only for others, but also for ourselves. We are acknowledging that we, too, have suffered, and we are choosing to heal. We are choosing to stop the cycle of pain and start a new cycle of peace. But there are times when forgiveness feels difficult. When the pain runs deep, when the betrayal feels personal, it can seem impossible to forgive. In these moments, it can be helpful to remember that forgiveness is a process, not an event. It may not happen all at once. It may take time, and that is okay. The important thing is that we are taking the first step, choosing to open our hearts to the possibility of healing. One powerful Buddhist practice that can help in the process of forgiveness is loving-kindness meditation. In this meditation, we send thoughts of love and compassion to ourselves and to others. We start by offering kindness to ourselves, acknowledging our own pain and suffering, and wishing ourselves peace. Then, we extend this love to others, first to those we love, then to those we feel neutral about, and eventually to those we have difficulty with. By practicing loving-kindness, we gradually soften our hearts and open ourselves to the possibility of forgiveness. Forgiveness also involves letting go of the need for revenge or retribution. Often, when we have been hurt, we want justice. We want the person who wronged us to suffer in some way. But this desire for revenge only keeps us trapped in the past. It ties us to the pain and prevents us from moving forward. True forgiveness is about releasing this need for justice and allowing ourselves to heal. The practice of forgiveness can also extend to situations where we feel life itself has wronged us. We may feel that fate has been unkind, that we have been dealt an unfair hand. In these cases, forgiveness is not about excusing the situation, but about accepting it as part of life's flow. Everything happens for a reason, and sometimes the pain we experience can lead to growth, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of ourselves in the world around us. Forgiveness is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of strength. It takes courage to forgive, especially when we have been deeply hurt. But by practicing forgiveness, we reclaim our power. We take control of our emotional state and choose to live in peace, rather than in constant turmoil. We become the masters of our own hearts, and in doing so, we create a ripple effect of peace in the world around us. As we move through life, we will inevitably encounter situations that challenge us. People will hurt us, life will disappoint us, and things may not always go as planned. But in each of these moments, we have a choice. We can choose to hold on to anger, resentment, and pain, or we can choose to forgive. The path of forgiveness is the path of peace. It is the path of freedom. Remember, forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It is the key to unlocking a life free from the chains of the past. And when we forgive, we create space for new experiences, new relationships, and new possibilities to enter our lives. So, take a deep breath, let go of the weight you have been carrying, and embrace the freedom that comes with forgiveness. The journey to peace begins with a single step, and that step is forgiveness. Creating a life without anger, long-term practices. As we near the end of this journey together, it's time to look ahead. Imagine a life where anger no longer clouds your judgment, where your heart remains steady even in the face of life's most challenging moments. It might seem like an impossible dream, but let me assure you, it is not. The power to create a life without anger lies in your hands, and today, we will explore how to build that life step by step. You've already taken the first and most important step by recognizing that anger is a habit, a learned response that can be unlearned. By understanding the roots of anger and how it affects us, you've begun to transform your relationship with it. But to truly live without anger, this journey requires consistent, long-term practices, changes that you must integrate into your daily life. In Buddhism, the path to peace is often referred to as a long and gradual process. It's not about making a sudden, dramatic shift, but rather about taking small, intentional steps toward transformation. Think of it like planting a seed. At first, it may seem insignificant, but with patience, attention, and care, it grows into something beautiful and powerful. Similarly, your efforts to remove anger from your life may start small, but over time, they will lead to profound changes in your emotional landscape. The first long-term practice is mindfulness, the practice of being fully present in each moment, without judgment. Mindfulness allows you to observe your emotions as they arise without being swept away by them. When you feel anger bubbling up, instead of reacting immediately, you pause. You take a breath and observe the sensation of anger within your body and mind. You acknowledge it, but you don't allow it to control you. At first, this may feel difficult. Our natural reaction is often to react quickly, either by acting on our anger or by suppressing it. But mindfulness allows you to break that cycle. It creates a space between stimulus and response. In that space, you have the power to choose your reaction. When you practice mindfulness, you are not at the mercy of your emotions. You become the master of them. Another important practice is compassion, not just compassion for others, but also for yourself. Anger often arises from a sense of hurt or injustice, and the root of that is often a deep-seated belief that we have been wronged. When we are able to cultivate compassion for ourselves, we begin to see that we are all imperfect, that we are all doing the best we can with the tools we have. Think about a time when you were angry at someone. Often, anger is fueled by a desire for that person to be different, to act in a way that suits our expectations. But when we practice compassion, we can begin to see the humanity in others. We realize that their actions, however hurtful they may seem, are also driven by their own pain, fears, and insecurities. Instead of reacting with anger, we can respond with understanding and kindness. This shift in perspective doesn't happen overnight, but over time, with consistent practice, you will find that your heart becomes more open. The more you practice compassion for others, the more you will naturally extend that same compassion toward yourself. You will forgive yourself for your own mistakes, just as you learn to forgive others for theirs. The third practice that can help you live without anger is gratitude. When we are caught in anger, we are often focused on what is wrong, what has been taken from us, or what we believe we deserve. But when we practice gratitude, we shift our focus. Instead of looking at what is lacking or unfair, we begin to notice the many blessings in our lives, the things that are going right, the people who love and support us, the simple joys of everyday life. Gratitude can be a powerful antidote to anger. When you take the time each day to reflect on what you are thankful for, your perspective begins to change. Instead of feeling resentful or angry, you begin to feel appreciation for the good that exists in your life. Over time, gratitude becomes a habit, and it naturally counteracts the tendency to focus on negativity and frustration. Another key practice is detachment. This doesn't mean disengaging from life or becoming indifferent to the world around you. It means recognizing that everything in life is temporary and nothing is entirely within our control. When we attach too strongly to our desires, expectations, or outcomes, we set ourselves up for frustration and disappointment. But when we practice detachment, we free ourselves from the need to control every situation. Detachment allows you to approach life with a sense of ease and acceptance. It doesn't mean that you stop caring about the outcome, but rather that you learn to be okay with whatever happens. You can still work toward your goals and strive for success, but you do so with the understanding that life is unpredictable and things don't always go according to plan. Detachment helps you release the tension that often fuels anger, allowing you to respond with calmness instead of frustration. And then there is forgiveness, perhaps one of the most powerful tools for living without anger. Holding on to grudges or past hurt is like carrying a heavy burden. The longer we hold on to these negative emotions, the more they weigh us down. Forgiveness doesn't mean that we condone or accept wrongdoing. It simply means that we choose to release the grip that anger has on our hearts. Forgiveness is a gift that you give to yourself. When you forgive, you free yourself from the past. You stop letting someone else's actions control your emotional state. And in doing so, you create space for peace and healing. It may be difficult at first, especially if the hurt runs deep, but forgiveness is a practice that can be cultivated over time. As you forgive, you will find that your heart becomes lighter and your anger begins to dissolve. The final long-term practice I want to share with you is patience. Anger often arises when we feel rushed, frustrated, or as though things should be happening differently. But patience teaches us to slow down, to take a step back, and to trust the timing of life. With patience, we learn to accept that everything happens in its own time, and that there is no need to force or control outcomes. Patience allows us to move through life with a sense of calm, knowing that we don't need to rush or react impulsively. As you integrate these practices into your life, you will begin to notice subtle shifts in how you respond to the world around you. Situations that once would have triggered anger will no longer have the same power over you. You will find that your heart remains steady even in the midst of difficulty. You will become more resilient, more compassionate, and more at peace with yourself and others. But remember, this is not a destination, it is a journey. Living without anger is not something that happens overnight. It takes time, effort, and commitment. Some days will be easier than others. There may be moments when old patterns resurface, and you may feel tempted to react in anger. But with each step you take, you are building a new way of being, a way that is grounded in peace, compassion, and understanding. And as you continue this journey, remember to be gentle with yourself. Growth takes time, and there is no need to rush. Celebrate the small victories along the way, the moments when you choose peace over anger, when you respond with compassion instead of frustration. These moments are the seeds of lasting change, and over time, they will grow into a life that is free from anger and full of peace. This is the promise of Buddhist wisdom. It is not about becoming perfect, but about becoming more mindful, more compassionate, and more connected to the true peace that lies within you. The more you practice, the more natural it will become to live without anger, and the more your life will transform in ways you never thought possible. So take a deep breath, and know that the power to change is already within you. Conclusion: the journey to lasting peace. As we come to the end of this journey, let me first remind you of the incredible truth we've uncovered together. Anger is not something you need to hold on to. It is a temporary reaction, a passing storm in the sky of your mind. And just like the weather, it will pass. The question is, how long do you allow it to linger? How much peace are you willing to sacrifice for a fleeting burst of frustration? Imagine for a moment that you are standing in front of a clear, tranquil lake. The water is calm, undisturbed. Now, picture a stone being thrown into the lake. The water ripples, disturbs, and shakes. But what happens once the stone sinks to the bottom? The water returns to its peaceful state. That is what anger is like. The stone is the event or person that triggers it, and the ripples are the emotions and thoughts that follow. But once you recognize the stone and let it settle, the ripples fade away. Buddha taught that everything in life is temporary. Anger, just like joy, pain, or any other emotion, is not permanent. It is a wave that comes and goes. But in our daily lives, we often forget this truth. We hold onto the wave, trying to control it, letting it dictate our actions, and in the process, we suffer. But when we learn to recognize the wave for what it is and let it pass through us without clinging to it, we can experience a freedom that many people never taste. You may wonder, is it possible to live without anger? The answer is not simple. It's not about eliminating anger entirely, it's about how we choose to respond to it. Anger will come. It is a natural emotion, but it doesn't have to control you. You don't need to let it cloud your judgment or dictate your actions. Instead, you can choose to see it for what it is, a signal, a reaction, and ultimately, something that can be transformed. In the teachings of Buddhism, we often talk about the importance of mindfulness. Mindfulness is simply being aware of what is happening in the present moment, without judgment. When we practice mindfulness, we become aware of our emotions as they arise. And when we are aware of anger as it arises, we can make a choice. Instead of reacting automatically, we can pause, breathe, and ask ourselves, is this reaction serving me? Is this reaction bringing peace, or is it taking it away? Anger often arises when we feel hurt, threatened, or misunderstood. It is a natural response to situations where we feel like we've been wronged. But the key to overcoming anger lies in understanding that these feelings are often based on our own attachments, our attachment to being right, to winning, or to proving ourselves. In those moments, we must remember, our happiness is not dependent on being right or winning. True peace comes from letting go of the need to control others and instead, controlling our own responses. It's easy to think that we need to change the world around us to find peace. We look for external solutions, changing people, circumstances, or environments. But Buddhism teaches us that peace comes from within. When we change our internal world, our thoughts, our reactions, our beliefs, we can experience peace no matter what is happening around us. In fact, the world outside often becomes less of a source of stress when we stop reacting to it with anger and frustration. We have spent these parts exploring different ways to handle anger, and I want to remind you that this is a practice, not a one-time fix. As you begin to notice your anger and work with it, you will find that some days are easier than others. Some days, the stone will be bigger and the ripples will be stronger. But each time you notice anger and choose to respond differently, you are building a new habit. You are teaching your mind and heart a new way of being. Buddhism does not teach perfection. It teaches progress. And so, if you find yourself angry again in the future, do not be discouraged. Be compassionate with yourself. The goal is not to never feel anger. It's to create space between feeling the anger and reacting to it. That space is where your power lies. In that space, you can choose to breathe, to pause, and to respond with wisdom rather than emotion. The practice of letting go of anger is also deeply connected to the practice of compassion. Compassion, both for others and for yourself, softens the harshness of anger. When we feel anger rising, we can ask ourselves, what is the other person going through? What might they be struggling with? This does not excuse hurtful behavior, but it helps us understand that everyone is fighting their own battles. Compassion allows us to release the need for others to behave in a way that meets our expectations. It frees us from the grip of judgment and helps us return to a place of peace. Forgiveness is another essential part of this journey. Holding on to anger is like holding on to a burning coal, hoping to hurt someone else. The only person who suffers is you. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting or excusing the harm that was done. It means releasing the grip that anger has on you. When you forgive, you let go of the power the past holds over you, and you open yourself to peace. It is a gift you give to yourself, not to the person who wronged you. True freedom comes when you no longer need to fight against the flow of life. Life is unpredictable, and people will continue to challenge you. But when you find peace within yourself, nothing on the outside can disturb it. The storms may come, but you will remain steady. This is the wisdom that Buddhism offers. Peace is not found in controlling the outside world, but in mastering the inner world. As we close this series, remember that the journey to a life without anger is not an overnight process. It takes time, practice, and patience. You will slip. You will get angry. But every time you catch yourself and choose a different path, you are moving closer to your true nature, the calm, peaceful, and wise being that resides within you. Thank you for taking this journey with me. You are now equipped with tools to handle anger in a way that brings peace to your life. But remember, this is just the beginning. Every day is an opportunity to practice, to grow, and to become the person you are meant to be. Peace is not a destination. It is a way of living. And with each moment, you are getting closer to it. Before I end, I want to remind you of one last thing. You have the power to shape your experience. The more you practice mindfulness, compassion, and forgiveness, the more you will find that peace is not something you have to chase. It is already within you. All you need to do is recognize it. So, as you go forward, carry this wisdom with you. Let it guide you through the challenges and joys of life. And always remember, anger is not your enemy. It is simply a signal, a teacher. When you learn to listen, you can transform it into wisdom, and in doing so, find lasting peace. Thank you for being a part of Wisdom Woven. If you found this series helpful, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. We value your thoughts and would love to hear how this has impacted you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback is what keeps us going. May your path be filled with peace, wisdom, and compassion.